Well, it is a historic day for Syria. After more than 13 years of civil war, Damascus fell in under 10 days, and Assad has fled the area under all sorts of mystery. A war, an offensive, and a political decision. But the interesting thing is that they all have the same root cause, and it is a major problem that reoccurs across almost all civil wars. So if you came here looking for the short answer, then yes, it is Russia no longer having the capacity to help the Assad regime, and then a multi-pronged offensive pinching Assad from all around Damascus, which in turn made the situation untenable. But if you want the real story, then buckle up. We political scientists have a funny name for the unifying cause of all three components, the credible commitment problem. Let's zoom out for a second. Broadly, wars end in one of two ways. The complete military defeat of one side, to the point where continuing to fight is infeasible, and a negotiated settlement, when both parties could continue, but instead choose to come to terms instead. World War II is a great example of military defeat. The Korean War is a great example of a negotiated settlement. Now, sometimes those negotiations take place at an actual table, like this. Other times, the war just ends, with a tacit recognition that whatever the situation looked like at that moment is how it will remain afterward. But with that as a preface, think about this question for a second. What percentage of interstate wars end in a negotiated settlement? Well, despite historical fascination with cases of military defeat, about 2/3 end in a deal of some kind. And that actually understates it a bit, because there are a ton more cases where settlements happen so fast that there simply are not enough casualties to even call the event a war. However, civil wars are different. Only about 1/5 of them end in a settlement. And the reason is the aforementioned credible commitment problem. You see, when two states reach an agreement, they retain their military capacity afterward. What makes these deals sustainable is that they roughly match what the expected outcome of a return to war would generate, except neither side has to pay the costs of war under the terms of an agreement. When civil wars end, though, a government has to go back to governing. And for that to effectively happen, the other side needs to lay down its arms. So you can imagine a situation where the government is clearly likely to win the war, and thus it sets its demands to the rebels to indeed lay down their arms, and recognize the government as the state's legitimate authority. In return, the government will give amnesty to the rebels, Scout's honor. The problem here is that once the rebels lay down their arms, the government has no incentive to follow through on the terms that it has offered. After all, the rebel group no longer has its guns. They are sitting ducks. And given that a civil war was just ongoing, the parties probably do not like each other very much, and thus the government would jump at the chance to take advantage of the situation. In turn, the rebels will refuse those terms. They know that the government cannot credibly commit to the amnesty concessions proposed, and so fighting to live another day is preferable. And if you are not sure whether the world works like this, just ask Yevgeny Prigozhin. Oh wait, you can't. The perverse part is that if the rebels manage to turn things around, then now they will demand that the government lay down its arms, and thus the problem persists, but in reverse. This is why so few civil wars end in a negotiated settlement, and it is also why civil wars last so long. They tend to continue until one side is militarily defeated. So, credible commitment problems causing 13 years of civil war? Check. The thing about the situation is that it can leave the soldiers of the losing side frustrated. Their incentives are not the same as their leaders. Yes, if, say, they come from an ethnic minority group, they must worry that the winning side will break any promises made and pass, say, discriminatory laws. And in some civil wars, their post-conflict fate may look a whole lot worse. but there is a good chance that they will mostly be able to go about their business afterward. In contrast, the losing side's leaders in a civil war rarely remain unscathed. You see, the winner must worry that one day the loser will see another opportunity to spark a rebellion and take it. Consequently, some leaders may elect to go into exile when they reach the point of no return, assuming someone else is willing to take them. Failing that, spending the rest of their lives in jail is a good outcome. That is because prisoners can still come back to power, and again, they are not about to pass on that chance if it arises. The only way to guarantee that they can never return is to, permanently remove them from Earth. And thus, the loser's inability to credibly commit to retire from rebellion causes the winner's inability to credibly commit to not jailing or executing the loser's leadership. But this creates an interesting tension. A war can reach a point where the soldiers do not care enough to continue the fight, despite the insistence of leadership. In Syria, this moment arrived rapidly. Once it became clear that Russia's distractions in Ukraine meant that the Kremlin was not going to help prop up Assad, and once Israel solved the other half of the problem by neutering Hezbollah, and therefore making that group physically incapable of helping, his troops also lost interest in the battle. And that is how you go from this to this in 10 days. So, credible commitment problems causing a rapid end to the war. Check. The Russia part of this was a double whammy, though. The typical way to resolve credible commitment issues is to have a third-party enforcer guarantee the terms. That way, one side can lay down its arms and still rest assured that the war's winner will not exploit them. The third-party enforcer would step in under such circumstances, which deters any attempted exploitation in the first place. However, that presupposes that such a third-party enforcer exists. Any country wanting to play that role must be 1. Strong enough to crush any violation of the terms, 2. Have the spare military capacity to deploy to the region, 3. Have the political will to do it, and 4. Actually want to prop up the protected side. That last bit prevents, say, the United States from fulfilling such a role for Assad. Western powers would rather see him head to The Hague and await trial. Consequently, for the Assad regime, only Russia had the ability to be such a hypothetical enforcer. But that presupposes the political will to be one, and again, that is no longer the case thanks to Ukraine. So even if Assad's forces had managed to hold on to Damascus for a long time, there was no practical way to secure a peace that would have protected Assad. And so up in the night he went. Credible commitment problems causing Assad to flee? Check. Well, there is only one proper way to finish this video. And that is my take on the fast-moving situation. If you have any burning questions about it, please post them in the comments below, and vote up the ones that you like. I will be back soon on my secondary channel to answer them. And, as always, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Take care.